Claressa Shields has done it. She really has done it. The woman who has been walking around calling herself the greatest woman of all time, the GWOAT, the face of women's boxing, has now decided that in the middle of a training camp for a fight against Kaye Scott that she is supposed to be locked in on, she is going to stop everything, get in a studio, and record a rap diss song aimed at Alycia Baumgardner. And I need you to sit with that for 1 second before we go any further, because the framing that is being pushed out there right now is that this is some kind of bold champion move, some kind of alpha energy, some kind of she is unbothered and dropping heat. That is not what this is. That is not what any of this is. What this actually is a woman who is watching her leverage collapse in real time, watching the sport move on without her, watching a smaller, lighter, faster fighter live rent-free in her head, and instead of handling that in the ring like the champion she claims to be, she is handling it on an AI-generated single cover with a Barbie doll that does not even look like her. And the crazy part, the part nobody wants to say out loud yet, is that this snippet, this 10-second little snippet she dropped called Run Your Mouth, is not the story. The song is trash, we will get to that, but the song is the surface. The story underneath the song is the one you have not been told yet, and by the time we get to the part where we talk about who her friend group actually is, who she has burned, who she has ignored on wax, and what this whole rollout tells you about where her career actually sits with the State Farm Arena date closing in and MVP already banning her from their entire promotional ecosystem, you are going to understand why this is not a diss track. This is a distress signal. This is the sound of a career that is not selling tickets at the pace it should, not landing brand deals, not moving the needle, trying to manufacture heat by punching 30 pounds down. And when we get to the contract and clout breakdown later in this video, and I promise you we are getting there, you are going to see why every single move she has made in the last 12 months has been about one thing, and it is not boxing. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Alright, let us set the whole board so nobody is lost on the pieces. Claressa Shields, undisputed multi-division champion out of Flint, Michigan, two-time Olympic gold medalist, one of the most decorated amateur boxers this country has ever produced. Nobody, and I mean nobody in this space, is taking her resume from her, and that is not what this conversation is. This conversation is about what she has done with that resume since she got it, and specifically what she has done in the last calendar year, because the last calendar year has been a masterclass in how to take generational goodwill and set it on fire in public. On the other side of this, you have Alycia Baumgardner, undisputed super featherweight, one of the sharpest, most technical fighters in her weight class, signed to MVP, which for anybody who does not follow the business side is Most Valuable Promotions, Jake Paul's promotional company that has quietly been building one of the most active female rosters in the sport. Baumgardner walks around at 130. Claressa just fought at 175 against Lonnie Daniels, and is now cutting to 160 for the August 15th matchup with Kaye Scott, the Australian Unified Middleweight Champion, at State Farm Arena in Atlanta on DAZN. So right off the top, before we even get to the music, before we even get to the AI Barbie cover, before we even get to the middle fingers coming out of the boxing gloves, understand the geography of this. We are talking about a woman who fights at 160 aiming a diss record at a woman who fights at 130. That is a 30-pound gap. In boxing, that is not a rivalry. That is a bully looking for a mismatch. And the stakes here are bigger than one snippet, because what Claressa is doing with this rollout is telling the entire industry, the entire brand ecosystem, and every potential co-promoter what kind of partner she is. She is telling Nike, she is telling Powerade, she is telling Target, she is telling Chipotle, she is telling every major that might have picked up the phone about a women's boxing endorsement, exactly who she is. She is telling her opponent's legal team, in writing, on a public post, exactly what her posture is toward a woman who has already publicly said consequences will be paid after MVP MMA won in Los Angeles. She is telling the fans who have been holding the line for her that their loyalty is being spent on a rap career nobody asked for. And she is doing all of this while she is supposed to be in camp for the biggest solo headline card of her calendar year. So the question that is going to sit under this entire video, the question I want you carrying with you from this moment until the outro, is a very simple one. If this fight against Scott is so locked in, if Baumgardner is so beneath her, if her legacy is so bulletproof, then why does everything she is doing right now, from the Instagram lives to the lawsuit threats to the AI Barbie cover, smell so much like panic? Let us start with what you can actually see, because you do not have to take my word for any of this. The receipts are already public, and they are still up on her page as of this recording. Claressa posted the single cover for a song called Run Your Mouth to her own social media, with the caption, "You wanted a response. Press play. Run your mouth. Claressa Shields." That is her, in her words, on her own page. The cover art, and I want you to picture this because it is genuinely one of the funniest pieces of visual marketing I have seen a professional athlete put out this year, depicts Claressa as a pin-up Barbie doll. Except the Barbie doll does not look like Claressa. It looks like a pageant contestant that has never been to Flint in her life. The doll is noticeably lighter complexioned than Claressa actually is, which is confusing on a marketing level because you are the subject of your own cover. Why would you whiten yourself? Then in the bottom corner of the same cover, you have what is supposed to be Alycia Baumgardner, groveling at the doll's feet, tears streaming, and rendered a shade darker than Baumgardner actually is in real life. And then, for reasons nobody on earth can explain, there is a smaller image on the side of the cover where a hand with the middle finger up is punching through what looks like a boxing glove that turned into an MMA glove halfway through the design process. It is AI. It is cheap AI. It is the kind of AI you get when you type, "Make me a Barbie boxer," into a free generator and hit go once. This is the actual marketing rollout of a woman who calls herself the face of women's boxing. This is not a bootleg. This is the official art she pushed to her own page. Then there is the snippet itself. 10 seconds. 10 seconds of audio is what she chose to give the world as the appetizer. And listen, I turned the beat off in my own coverage of this for copyright reasons, but even a cappella, the delivery is a problem. She sounds rushed. She sounds like she is chasing the beat rather than writing it. The way she pronounces internet alone tells you nobody in that studio pumped the brakes and said, "Hey, take that again." The bars themselves, this 304 cells, she be on the internet saying she can whoop me, now she pressing charges, the cops want to book me, whole way above 30 trying to be a bully. Those are Dr. Seuss bars dressed up as menace, and I am not saying that to be cute. I am saying that as somebody who listens to a lot of rap, a lot of Detroit rap specifically, because this beat is trying to be Detroit. This beat is trying to sit in the same room as a T Grizzly record, and instead it sounds like somebody took a T Grizzly type beat off YouTube and forgot to buy the exclusive. The beat is not the issue. The beat is fine. The problem, as I have said before and I will say again, is user error. She sounds offbeat, and when the beat is running one direction and the artist is running the other direction, that is not a diss record, that is a track meet. Then, and this is where the surface layer really starts to compound on itself, there are her replies. Because Claressa did not just drop the song and let it breathe. She got in the comments. Somebody said drop that weight like she asked, which is a perfectly reasonable, low-stakes comment, and Claressa replied by calling the person a loser and telling them Baumgardner needs to gain, because, "I'm number one, stupid." Somebody else said the Barbie looks better than the person, and Claressa's response was to call that fan ugly by name. Somebody else said the whole thing was wacky as hell, and Claressa, verified, blue check, replied and called them ugly too. She is a professional athlete, on her own verified page, calling paying fans ugly in the same week her tickets went on sale. This is the marketing campaign. This is the rollout strategy. She is arguing with strangers who have profile pictures she has never even zoomed in on, and she is doing it under her own name, on the same post where she is supposed to be selling a song, and next to the same handle where you can buy tickets to see her fight Kaye Scott. That is not confidence. That is not champion energy. That is a person who cannot get off the app. And if you think that is bad, wait until you hear what she did on Instagram Live, threatening to sue MVP for defamation while she is the one who threw the slap on camera in Los Angeles. And oh, do I have more for you. The stans are really not going to like this next part, because the next layer is where this stops being about one bad snippet and starts being about a pattern, a documented, on-the-record, on-wax pattern that Claressa's supporters have been pretending does not exist. Sit up for this one, because when we get through the next few minutes you are going to understand that run your mouth is not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is what run your mouth is quietly admitting about who she is willing to answer, who she is not willing to answer, and what that ranking system tells you about the confidence level inside her own camp right now. Here is the cultural layer, and this is where the wheels really come off. Because if you are going to position yourself as a rapper, if you are going to drop cover art, if you are married to a rapper who has publicly claimed at various points to have written a significant portion of another rapper's catalog, then the rules of engagement change. You do not get to pick and choose which disses count and which ones do not. And Claressa Shields has been dissed on wax, by actual rappers, multiple times, and has said next to nothing that qualifies as a real response. Let us start with Remy Ma. Remy Ma, on Connie Diamond's record Head Tap, handled the second verse and sent what the entire culture immediately read as pointed shots directly at Claressa and at Papoose. Vibe wrote it up. Every hip-hop blog in the space picked it up within 48 hours. There is a passage on that verse, in context, in the timeline of what has been happening publicly between these two camps, that is understood by anybody paying attention to be aimed at that household. And then Remy went back and did it again in the studio, on camera, on the rap about that series with the green background, and got even sharper. You want to be a baddie, but you're not bad enough. You ugly, you can't make this up with makeup. The numbers ain't adding up. You're not a baddie. That is not subliminal. That is not vague. That is a real rapper, one of the most technically respected female MCs of her entire generation, drawing a target on you on wax, twice, minimum, possibly 3 times. And Claressa's response has been what? A little freestyle over Boss Mundlo's Shake dat a record on Facebook, where she went, quote, "Now she on the gram talking spicy for nothing." That is not a response. That is a status update. Then you have Nigeria, who was reportedly Claressa's close friend and roommate, who went and stood in front of the Claressa Shields street sign in Flint, in her city, on her block, and dissed her on camera, and reportedly dropped what fans are calling shocking, damaging receipts on the same round of posts. Your ex-best friend used your own street to come at you, and you did not answer. Not on wax. Not with a snippet. Nothing. And the argument some of the softer stands want to make is, well, that is a personal situation, that is not the same. No. It is exactly the same. If Nigeria felt compelled enough to walk to your street sign and record a diss and roll out receipts, that friendship was already over, and the response to a public diss is a public response. That is the game. You do not get to skip the game because the opponent is inconvenient. So now stack it. Remy Ma, actual rapper, disses you on wax, on head tap, and again in the studio. You reply with a Facebook freestyle. Nigeria, actual former friend, disses you on your own block with receipts. Silence. And then Alycia Baumgardner, who is a professional boxer, who is not a rapper, who does not sing, who is not a performer in that lane, extends her hand at MVP MMA 1 in LA and gets slapped for it, and later says at a media scrum that consequences will be paid and she believes she would knock Claressa out. And that is the target you pick for a full studio session? A cover art rollout, a snippet drop, and a comment section war? That tells you everything about the ranking system inside Claressa's head. You do not answer the rappers because you know you cannot compete with them lyrically. You do not answer the ex-friend because she has receipts. You answer the boxer because the boxer does not rap. It is the entire logic of a bully. You pick the smallest opponent in the smallest arena and you swing. And there is another cultural piece nobody wants to talk about, which is the friend group carnage. Because it is not just Baumgardner. It is not just Nigeria. Go down the list. Shadasia Green, Beef. Layla Ali, who by all reporting was an early mentor figure, who Claressa was publicly warmed to for years. Now Layla is on camera saying she is not breaking bread with Claressa, she is not coming out of retirement for that fight, she does not trust the people around her, and it is a no-can-do. Francine Cruz-Dezern, the same story, once cool, now badmouthed on the microphone every chance she gets. Even her own sister and her own cousin have been dragged into public disputes at various points. That is not a personality clash. That is not everybody is a hater. When every single person in your orbit, from your mentors to your peers to your ex-best friend to your own family members, ends up on the outs with you, the common denominator is not them. The common denominator is you. And I want to be fair here, because I do not want anybody accusing me of running a hit piece. There is a version of this story where Claressa is a competitor, and competitors talk crazy, and everybody in combat sports says something they regret in a press cycle. I hear that argument. I have heard it 100 times in the comments of my last 3 videos on her. But the counter to that argument, the reason it does not survive scrutiny, is that competitors in every other combat sport find a way to hype a fight without accusing a fellow professional of criminal or unverifiable behavior on a public post. Competitors find a way to be brash without spending a training camp arguing with fans in their own mentions. Competitors find a way to sell tickets without recording rap disses at featherweights 30 pounds south of them. So the she is just a competitor defense is not a defense. It is an excuse. And it is the exact excuse the stands lean on because they do not have a better one right now. Especially not after MVP made it official and banned her from every one of their events until further notice. Now here is where I need to slow down, because this is the moment the whole story changes gears. Up to this point we have been talking about music and personality and pettiness. We have been in entertainment mode. From here on out, I want you thinking about this as a business story, because that is what it actually is, and once you see it as a business story, none of Claressa's behavior looks random anymore. It all starts to make a very specific, very desperate kind of sense, and it starts pointing in a direction that Claressa's own camp cannot afford for you to see too clearly. Layer 3. The industry layer. This is the layer the average boxing fan does not spend time thinking about, and it is the layer that explains everything you have just watched. Let us start with the promotional math. Alycia Baumgardner is signed to MVP, which as I mentioned earlier is the company that has been quietly running one of the most aggressive female fighter build programs in the sport. MVP's model, if you have been watching the way they book, is high-frequency activity. Get your fighters on cards, get them on Netflix, get them on Fox, get them in front of new eyeballs, keep them working. Amanda Serrano just fought, and reportedly has crossover matchups on the way. Baumgardner reportedly has a network slot loading. The MVP roster is being built like a stable, like an actual promotional company that understands that in 2026 boxing, activity is the currency. Claressa's camp does not operate that way. Claressa's camp has historically leaned on Claressa's individual star power to drive the marquee, which was a viable strategy in an earlier era of women's boxing when there was really only one name at the top. That is not the era we are in anymore. There are 10, 12, 15 names with legitimate followings now, and the promotional infrastructure around them is catching up fast. So when Claressa gets on Instagram Live and says y'all suck, and calls out the MVPW roster and dares them to step to her, what she is actually saying, whether she realizes it or not, is that MVP has become a competitor at the promotional level, not just at the fighter level. And she is losing that competition. That is why the mention keeps happening. That is why she cannot stop bringing up Baumgardner even in interviews that started about somebody else, even in a training camp for a completely different opponent in Atlanta. Now stack the ticket problem on top of that. She just signed a reported $8 million deal ahead of her 2026 fight, and she is headlining State Farm Arena on August 15th against Kaye Scott, and there have been persistent whispers, and I want to be careful and say whispers because the pre-sale posts from her own page were tagged with warning language like, "Don't say I didn't warn you," trying to gas up demand. That is a red flag. When the athlete has to post their own pre-sale hype like a real estate broker chasing a listing, the numbers are not moving the way the camp wanted them to move. Not catastrophic. Soft. And when you are the self-proclaimed face of women's boxing headlining a card in your prime with an $8 million bag attached, soft is a red flag. Soft is the number that tells the network, the site fee partners, and the future co-promoters exactly where your drawing power is. And soft numbers force a decision. You can either lean into the actual craft, make the fight against Scott competitive looking, hype your opponent, sell the storyline of the matchup itself, and rebuild the demand organically, or you can throw gasoline on the internet and hope somebody clicks. Guess which one Claressa picked? She picked the gasoline. The rap diss, the AI Barbie, the comment section wars, the callouts of retired fighters like Layla Ali, the callouts of rappers like Remy Ma from a Facebook livestream, the callouts of MMA legends, every single one of those moves is a manufactured spike. It is not a strategy. It is a series of flares fired into the sky because the real signal, the ticket signal, the brand signal, the streaming signal, is not being received at the level the $8 million contract was priced against. Then layer 3B, the brand deal problem. Real talk, and this is where I need you to think like a marketer for a second, not like a fan. When was the last time a major national brand, and I'm talking a Nike, a Powerade, a Target, a Sprite, a Chipotle, a brand with real 2026 buying power, announced a headline endorsement with Claressa Shields? Not a niche partnership. Not a boxing-specific partner. A real crossover, mainstream brand. It has been quiet. And it has been quiet for a reason, and the reason is that brands in this environment are terrified of unpredictable talent. Every argument in her comments, every fan she calls ugly by name, every public accusation she makes about another woman in her sport, every allegedly defamatory line in a diss track, is another checkbox on a brand safety report that lands on some VP of partnerships desk and gets the folder closed. She is not being frozen out because of racism, she is not being frozen out because of misogyny, she is being frozen out because she is a liability. And the tragedy of it is that if she operated with even 60% of the discipline of the athletes who are actually landing those deals right now, she would be one of the most bankable women in the sport. The resume is that good. 2-time Olympic gold. Undisputed at 3 weight classes. Flint story. Zeus Network Boxing Barbie campaign in the can. All the tools are there. But brands do not buy resumes. Brands buy predictability. And predictability is the one thing she refuses to sell them. Layer 3C, and this is the one I want you sitting with, is the defamation exposure, because now we are in real legal territory. Baumgardner has said, on the record, quoted in Sports Illustrated and Yahoo Sports, that the incident was unprovoked and that consequences will be paid. That is on tape. That is in print. That is documented. Anybody who has spent 5 minutes around this kind of situation knows what consequences will be paid is code for. It is code for lawyers. It is code for filings. It is code for a paper trail. And what has Claressa done in the days since that statement? She has jumped on Instagram Live and, according to reports circulated by outlets like the Jasmine Brand and Bad Left Hook, threatened to sue Baumgardner and MVP for defamation of character. She, the person who threw the slap on video, is threatening to sue the person she slapped and the promotion that banned her over the slap, for defamation. Read that sentence back in your head one time. And then she went further. She has, per the screenshots that are circulating from her own comments, referred to Baumgardner in language that would be extremely difficult to defend in a courtroom without receipts. She has, again per public posts, characterized Baumgardner in ways that a plaintiff's attorney would circle in red marker and put on the front page of a complaint. And this is a woman who has publicly said she is prepared to sue people for defamation. She has threatened it against bloggers. She has threatened it against streamers. She has threatened it against MVP. So she understands the concept. She just does not understand that it applies in both directions. You cannot be the person threatening a defamation lawsuit on Monday and posting statements that fit the textbook definition of defamation on Tuesday. That is not a strategy. That is building your opponent's case for them, in public, with a smile, and doing it in the same posting window where you are trying to sell 4-figure premium tickets in Atlanta. And here is the truth bomb. Here is the thing I have been walking you toward for the entire video, and I want you to really hear this, because everything up to this point, the trash rap, the AI Barbie, the ignored Remy Ma Receipts, the burned friendships, the soft ticket rollout, the missing brand deals, the MVP lifetime ban, the defamation exposure, every single one of those threads ties back to a single reality that Claressa Shields cannot say out loud and that her camp cannot admit. She is not being cornered by her enemies. She is being cornered by her own choices, and the choices are being made because the leverage she used to have is quietly gone. Read that again in your head. The leverage is gone. For a long stretch of her career, Claressa was the leverage. She was the reason the network showed up. She was the reason the site fee got approved. She was the reason the co-promoter took the meeting. She was the reason DAZN wrote the check. That is not the market anymore. The market has other names now, other draws, other stories, other rosters, other promotional companies moving with more velocity than her camp is moving with, and one of those companies, MVP, just banned her from every one of their events for life, which means every future Baumgardner fight, every future Serrano fight, every future crossover night, is happening in a building she is not allowed to walk into. That is not a Cold War. That is a closed door. And when the leverage disappears and the doors close, an athlete has two options. Option 1 is to go quiet, get back in the gym, take a smart fight, look phenomenal against Kaye Scott, and let the work rebuild the leverage. That is what a disciplined champion does. Option 2 is to try to manufacture the leverage through controversy, because controversy is the last free resource on the internet. Option 2 is what she picked. And the reason she picked it, the reason the diss track exists at all, the reason the AI Barbie exists at all, the reason she is calling fans ugly on her own page during her own presale window, is because she knows, on some level she is not saying out loud, that a boring news cycle for her right now is a dangerous news cycle for her career. Silence is the enemy. Any noise, even embarrassing noise, feels safer to her than silence. That is the actual reveal here. That is what Run Your Mouth is really about. Run Your Mouth is not a diss to Alycia Baumgardner. Run Your Mouth is a distress signal from an artist and an athlete who is scared of what happens when the room goes quiet, and who is willing to burn every professional relationship, every brand relationship, and every last drop of critical goodwill to keep the room loud. That is not a champion. That is a person allegedly trying to outrun their own irrelevance, and doing it at 160 pounds against a woman at 130, on a cover she paid an AI to make prettier than she is, while a real rapper who dissed her twice on wax still sits with no response. Now let us zoom back out, because the story is not all bleak, and the culture is not lost. Because while all of this has been going on, Alycia Baumgardner has been doing what disciplined professionals do. She has been posting her body of work. She has been showing up to media scrums answering the questions she is asked, being visibly annoyed when the questions are silly, and moving on. She has been posting photos where her physique speaks for itself, where the tricep is defined, where the complexion is glowing, where the outfit is right, and where the caption is short, and the comments underneath those photos are full of real people saying she looks good, without her having to prompt them to say it. That is a very underrated distinction. One woman posts a photo and the audience tells her she looks good. The other woman posts the photo and then reposts it, and reposts it again, and captions it with her own compliments about her own body, and then argues with anybody who does not chime in. Those are two completely different psychological profiles. One is a professional who trusts the work. The other is a person who needs the crowd to say it back, or the whole day falls apart. And that difference, that quiet, unglamorous, discipline versus desperation difference, is the entire story of who is going to still be standing at the top of this sport in 3 years. Baumgardner did not make a diss track. Baumgardner extended a hand. Baumgardner got slapped. Baumgardner said consequences will be paid, and then went and let her lawyers, her promoter, and her body of work do the talking. She has been on the right side of every single frame of this story since the moment it started, and she has done it without recording a single bar. That is not an accident. That is a professional. And this is the part one want the young fighters watching to take with them. You do not have to be the loudest voice in the room. You do not have to record a diss track every time a reporter asks you a question. You do not have to fight in the comment section of your own post. You do not have to burn every mentor, every peer, every friend, and every promotional partner just to prove that you are unbothered. Being genuinely unbothered looks like Baumgardner right now. Being genuinely unbothered looks like a fighter who trains, posts a workout, answers a question, gets banned nothing, and goes home. The person actually winning this exchange is the person who has said the least. Remember that. The person who has said the least. Claressa has said everything on every platform, in every register, on wax, in comments, in interviews, in rants, in lives, in spaces, in tweets, in reposts, and where has it gotten her? Softer ticket presale, quieter brand phones, more legal exposure, fewer allies, a lifetime ban from the biggest women's boxing promotional engine in the sport, and a rap snippet that is going to age like milk in a hot car in Atlanta in August. Meanwhile, Baumgardner posts one picture with a two-word caption, and the internet writes her marketing plan for her. That is the contrast. One person is fighting a war of noise. The other person is winning a war of quiet. And in this sport, in this culture, the war of quiet always wins the long game. Always. Write that down. So where does it go from here? Because that is really the question, and I want to give you two concrete things to track so you're not caught off guard when the next wave of this hits. Track 1. Watch what happens with a full Run Your Mouth song. Because right now it is a snippet, and a snippet is deniable. A snippet is you did not hear the whole thing yet. When the full track drops, we get to hear the verses in full, we get to see the streaming numbers in the first 48 hours, we get to see whether TikTok picks it up or whether it dies in the algorithm, and we get to see whether Papoose, who has been suspiciously absent from the songwriting credits nobody is confirming, actually stepped in on the record or whether she went at it alone. That is going to tell us a lot. Track 2. Watch the legal side. Watch the language coming out of Baumgardner's camp and MVP's camp in the next few weeks. Watch whether consequences will be paid turns into an actual filing, and watch how Claressa's team responds if it does, because that response is going to tell you exactly how confident they really are about what is provable and what is not, especially with the Kaye Scott fight looming on August 15th and a promoter that needs a clean fighter for a clean broadcast. Both of those tracks are going to unfold on their own timeline, and both of them are going to be covered on this channel in real time, so if you are not subscribed yet, this is your reminder that this is the kind of story that moves fast and rewards the people who are already in the room when it moves. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, do the whole thing. And before you click off, I want to tell you what is coming next, because the next video I am dropping is going to peel back another layer of this whole ecosystem that a lot of people have been asking me to talk about for months. We are going to sit down and go piece by piece through the actual promotional math behind the MVP roster, the $8 million Shields contract structure, the Kaye Scott fight economics, and the quiet reason a certain co-promoter in Claressa's camp has been reportedly making phone calls they do not want anybody to know about. There is a name that keeps showing up in two different places in this story that nobody in the mainstream boxing press has connected yet, and when we connect those dots on this channel next, you're going to understand why Run Your Mouth was never really about Alycia Baumgardner at all. It was about a room, a deal, and a deadline in Atlanta. Do not miss that one. It is already loaded up. Click it now while you are still in the mood, and I will see you in the next one.